Good morning. Welcome to Agriculture Live. My name's Rebecca Shields. I'm one of the directors at Agricultural Recruitment Specialists. And today I've got Dan Smith. So don't go anywhere. It's going to be a good one. You don't want to miss out. It's a great episode. It's all about the next generation in agriculture and farming in the UK. If you've got any questions or comments, please post them in the comment section and we'll get to them when we can. So Dan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Morning. Yeah, Dan Smith. I'm a farmer and consultant down in the Wye Valley, currently farming down near Monmouth. And I guess the exciting thing at the moment is I'm doing a Nuffield looking at the next generation.
Brilliant. So how did you get into the agricultural and farming industry and why, Dan?
Yeah, a good question. So I grew up on farms. My dad was a farm manager on a few estates in the UK, and left farming, went away from farming, and then came back into it through a love of farming, but because I met a load of people who were kind of practicing a new way of farming or farming slightly more environmentally, and there was a chance to come and manage a farm here. Which has huge social benefit, which is something that I was very interested in. So I returned to it that way, and have once again fallen in love with it.
So you went to Jamie's farm, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So have been running a farm down here, Jamie's Farm, Monmouth, for the last 7.5 years. So developed the farm and myself quite a bit, I would suggest, and been running this farm since then.
Fantastic. So why would you say this is a great industry to be in, Dan, for people that are considering coming into it?
In terms of people coming in afresh, I think there's a lot of change happening at the moment. So I would suggest there's a lot of opportunity. I'm not sure that it's quite recognised how much opportunity there is, but I think that there is so. And I would also suggest there are not many industries that give you quite such a community feel and a kind of a lifestyle feel with your work, which has its benefits. It also has its downsides maybe sometimes, but actually it's that kind of legacy thing that I think is quite an interesting part of it. And also, you have an impact on people's daily lives. What do they say? 3 times a day you need a farmer. But, we can produce good quality food. We can have other public goods, environmental, for example. And I think it's one of those industries that we simply can't do without.
Absolutely. So you're a Nuffield Scholar. You're doing a Nuffield Scholarship at the minute. Can you just explain for people that don't know what that is and what it entails?
Yeah, absolutely. And Nuffield's a really cool thing. It's there is a UK base, but it's also global, and so there are scholars selected every year. Let's say around 100 globally and around 20 in the UK, and it's a network of people who are trying to research their chosen subject, and you're supported by the organisation. You're sponsored by various organizations. For example, I'm sponsored by McDonald's very kindly. And it gives you an opportunity to travel the world and to learn and to meet people and to network. For example, I've just done a month in Canada, and I stayed with 8 farmers, all from the Nuffield network. Just went and stayed with them and learned from them, and they set me up with other visits. And it's a pretty amazing thing. And actually, I would suggest anyone who wants to be a bit progressive, or even further their leadership or their career, or even the sort of farming that they're doing, then I'd really urge people to look into it.
So tell us about what you've been doing. What's your topic? Where have you been? What's it entailed so far?
Yeah, so my topic title is Regeneration. So what I'm really looking at is whether change in policy and farming practices in the UK, but looking at a kind of global model, can get the next generation into farming. So from a belief that we need more good people, because of the work that I do with children who come to the farm, and we work with Jamie's Farm works about 2,500-3,000 children a year. And I've done that for a while. So I've met lots and lots and lots of really, really good children, young people, teenagers, and none of them really consider agriculture as a career. And there's a bit of a missing link there. And also, I think to see the progression that we need, I really think we need some more diversity in the industry, in lots of ways, culturally, sex, and all of these things. I think to really see a different mindset, that we need to see the progression. We need to shake that up a little bit, and that's kind of what I'm trying to work out how we can encourage and develop.
So, what have you found out so far?
No matter where you are in the world, they seem to be suffering with similar issues, actually.
Okay.
From developing countries to countries similar to the UK, there is a shortage of really good young people. It doesn't appear to be a very attractive industry for young people to get into, because there are plenty of other opportunities and all of these things. But equally, I found some people doing really, really amazing work. Early years education through to university education, through to closing the gap between the environmental sector, which seems very exciting, and the farming sector, and people working with technology, and all of these things that there is opportunity being created, and young people interested. It's just how do we really get the young people of the UK to hear that message and to understand it and see the opportunity.
It's the burning question at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, and I get that everywhere I go, and I'm still waiting for somebody to have a really good answer. I've heard lots of little bits of answers, and I'm slightly worried that I'm not also going to be the person. But I think actually the truth is the more we talk about it and the more we explore it, then actually that in itself puts it out there and puts ideas in people's heads. And the thing that I keep on coming back to actually is who holds the responsibility. Is it education? Is it government? Is it recruiters? Is it farmers? Is it where does that responsibility sit, and who should be taking the lead on it? And actually quite a lot of what I hear is it's somebody else's problem. But ultimately it's affecting us all. Certainly if we look at the food we want to eat, or the kind of environmental part of it.
So why do you think, from working, you worked on Jamie's Farm, why do you think that young people don't consider it unless they're from a farming background?
Yeah, I've been doing some surveys around this stuff, actually, and a lot of it is around preconceived ideas about hard work, lack of money, dirty jobs, all of these things. But actually, when you can get kids on farm, and I think this is the part of the key for it, actually, was certainly very early years kids, get kids on farm, sort of ignite something in them, and then continue on with that, showing them opportunity and education. I think there is something in that, but they can't understand things that they don't know anything about. And in my opinion, there's such a disconnect with food and farming that I can't really expect them to know. Whereas I have previously worked with an awful lot of lone migrant children from, Eritrea, the Congo, Vietnam, Syria, some quite sort of tough countries. But a lot of those young people still understand there's a kind of more of a close nature with food and farming and the land, and I think that they kind of understand it a bit more. And
is it because they, in these countries, they tend to know somebody who works the land?
Yeah, or they would have done themselves, or we're very lucky to have the sport we have. A lot of children don't have to grow veg in their gardens, for example, which sounds quite a basic thing, which it did happen before. That used to be that in a village the children would farm at harvest time. I'm going way back, but actually that we've completely lost that. It's not even it wouldn't even be talked about anymore. And when you consider how little time children are spending outside, and we know about obesity and food and cheap calories and things, that it's just such a void of knowledge there, and kind of how these things work, that farming it's, even if it's just not on their radar, so the closest they would get is a computer game, maybe a sort of farming simulator, or which is just
So how do we get it from, okay, you've got lots of farm parks now that we didn't have years ago, because farms have diversified. Kids love going to the farm park, seeing the animals, riding on the tractors, etc. And then they go to school, and maybe they'll do a trip. I mean, it's going to stop.
And then there are forest schools, and there are loads and loads of teachers doing amazing things as well. But actually, I would suggest that because it's generational, a lot of teachers would be quite dissatisfied in farming and kind of how that works. And that, it's not a bad thing. Teachers have a lot of time pressure on their hands to do other things. And actually, from a lot of stuff I see, sadly, a lot of teachers are just firefighting in class just to keep the kids there and keep them engaged. So some of these things are just a bridge too far. And I don't know that if children go to a farm park, are they going because it's a nice day out in the same way they go to a theme park? It's to me, I'm sure it helps, no doubt at all. But I don't know whether it's closing that gap in terms of, let's say, school leavers or university leavers being like, I'm going to do that as a career because, I don't know, there's robotics, there's drones, there's really, really good work with soils and rivers and genetics, and there's so many things to it that I just don't think young people know about, to be honest.
It's a catch-22, because often people go into careers that their parents have done, not always, but it is a common thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And that that's absolutely true for the farming industry, but equally we're losing a lot of good people because they see that the farming industry is difficult. And certainly, if you look at what's happening in the UK with SFI, SFS, there's a real disruption there, and it's not for the positive. And we need to keep those, because there are amazing people, young people within the industry, but we need to keep them. But I'm not necessarily sure we're doing a particularly successful job at that either.
So do we need to, make it part of a syllabus in terms of education?
Yeah, again, really difficult question, because I think there's an argument for everybody to do that. Whether we need it we need good doctors. We need, there are lots of things that I would suggest so, but it's how you kind of work out who best suits. And sadly, often farming has been, in those scenarios, farming's been seen as the kind of, we'll put those guys over there because they're never going to make a doctor, right? Or something in that scenario, which again is just, I just don't think it's applicable. It's not my kind of, it's not my way of being. But I think that, you see, when you start to really get into it, it's quite a complicated scenario that it's difficult to find an answer for.
I mean, how do we educate, the education providers, the teachers?
Yeah, and again, there's people doing really good work in that.
Suggesting this as a career option.
Yeah, and there's people doing good work in that. Leaf do an amazing job at trying to educate teachers and get them on board, and lots of them do it. The thing that I keep coming back to is I think that would follow if farming was much more of an attractive industry. There is a thing around health and safety, and we're a particularly unsafe industry. There is a thing about earnings and those sorts of things, and that's quite a difficult area, because a lot of farmers, it is their own business, and you're not always 100% sure on some of that stuff. And what I have really noticed is in certain sectors that are doing incredibly well, that is attractive to the next generation, where they can see opportunity because of income. Then that all of a sudden becomes much more attractive, and there are lots of industries paying an awful lot of money that that may not be as needed, but the world we live in, where we put what we put our value on in terms of consumers, I would suggest is very out of kilter, but that's the world we live in, right?
And so we've got that out of date image of the farmer with the straw hat, you know, you know, an older guy probably. You know, how do we change this PR and, you know, all of this?
And that's difficult because actually, you know, that is the demographic. You know, the average age of the farmer in the UK is between 50 and 60, would generally be a white male. You know, I think there's 15% females who have decision-making power in farming businesses is the current stat. You know, we need to shift that, but we can't be surprised that that's the go-to image because it's the truth. I think we need to be a lot more accepting of people. I think we need to be encouraging of people who show. I'm talking farmers here. If we're taking that we have some responsibility in this, which we, in my opinion, we do. You know, we need to encourage. We need to actively take some of that responsibility to engage and to encourage and to help. And you know, there are people doing McDonald's, for example, with their stuff at the Oxford Farming Conference. You know, people are really, really trying, and I think we can be welcoming to people in that. It sounds a small thing, but we can kind of get on board with it and try and help.
I mean, you've also got the issue of, you know, as I am in recruitment, that people want people with experience.
Yeah.
But it's how do you get that experience without, you know, having the experience?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you'd know much more than me, but I think that's probably indicative of a lot of industry, and I'm not quite sure the intricacies of how that kind of works. I think that again, maybe that's a responsibility thing. Maybe there's a responsibility there on universities and education to be providing more of the experience that the land managers or the farmers, whoever it happens to be, people in the industry require. But also, you know, we do have a responsibility to train people up on the job. We need to see the opportunity in others, I think, to fill some of those gaps. And that comes down to good leadership. Now, does it come back to the fact that maybe as well as providing subsidy for certain things, government should be perhaps writing policy or training people on leadership in the ag sector, or, you know, there's all those so many levels to it that I think we need, as an industry, we probably need to bring ourselves up to date on quite a lot of this stuff.
Because somebody said to me that in the Netherlands, they really value their farmers. You know, they, you know, have lots of lovely pictures everywhere. And, you know, could we do more of that?
I'm sure so. I mean, that would be a good thing to do. I think it's difficult to say whether we value farmers or not. I think it very depends on demographic of where you live and geographically where you live. And I think, you know, we've just gone through a massive change in government. I would like to suggest that we will see some good stuff in that area, but I honestly don't know, and that's tough. The government have certain objectives that they have to hit, and sadly, farming, in my opinion, seems to be suffering in that area. Now, again, I think we should be looking for the opportunity in that. You know, there will be opportunity created by precision farming or from, you know, so all sorts of things, tech mostly, that I think could have a real benefit for the industry and for the intake. But again, it's finding the people to do it, and, you know, without creating that divide of you're a farmer, so we're the big companies providing this.
So what are the implications of this if this doesn't change going forward?
Yeah, again, good one. I think we've always sort of got away, or certainly for the last 10, 15 years, maybe probably more so, we've kind of survived as an industry and also there are amazing people still working in it. I'm not taking that away at all. But what's the saying? To get us here is not what will get us there. And I think there is this change happening, and the change that we need to see in the time frame that we have, because of policy and because of pressures and all of these things, I'm just not sure we'll achieve it unless we really change some of the stuff we do around this. And also, we need, in my opinion, because I think it's all wrapped up in the same thing, we need to narrow this gap around food knowledge and how stuff's grown, where stuff comes from. Because if you look at the pressures on the NHS, I would suggest that's quite directly related to how much of a lack of understanding we have around how agriculture works.
It's quite scary, like when kids don't know where certain food comes from, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we work with a group of 16-year-olds from Kensington in London, and a group of 16-year-old boys, and they didn't understand that a burger was something that had to be made, had to be created. They just thought a burger was an object that you just had because it comes via app. And now, with that level of divide and that level of knowledge, then if you're asking what happens in the future, then I think we've got serious issues. Far beyond recruitment or even what I'm looking at, but that's because we're continuing on this sort of divided path.
Yeah. Do you think that, I mean, I'm not from a farming background, and I came from a commercial background, sales, etc. And when I first came into this industry, this space, I know that there wasn't a lot of companies utilising websites and new technology. I know now we've got, some great markets opening up, in agri-tech and, all sorts of things. But because maybe, I'm not saying this like, that all people are like this, but because we had that kind of settled older farmer, not too interested in social media, etc., it didn't really get the word out and let people see what's happening. And now we really need to ramp that up, utilising TikTok and all these things where the young people are, to show them what we can do.
And actually that is, I do see a bit of hope and a bit of opportunity there. There's people like Tom Pemberton and Cammy the sheep guy, and YouTube especially. And I sound really old. I'm saying I don't do TikTok and I don't do Snapchat, but I know that lots of the young people that we have visit do, and they quite often say, certainly about Cammy or even the Hoof GP guy. Kids are obsessed with that stuff. They love it, and it is a window into the world. And I absolutely think that there's mileage there in terms of capturing their imagination.
But then, Dan, you've got the problem again of, right, the adults, the parents haven't got any education on this stuff. And the kids are going to their parents, I really want to do farming, and the parents don't really have enough knowledge.
No.
Or maybe have old-fashioned views of what it is and distract them away from that. It's just
I'm sure that
a minefield, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure that happens. And again, is that the kind of responsibility of the government or teachers or education? And I wish I had those answers. But what I would say is that the more we put it out there, even if, say, 100,000 children watch a video about sheep and 5 of them who've not from farming decide to be sheep farmers, that's better than none of them, right? In my simplistic view of that. And maybe we could do more. I'd love to see coach loads of kids going to places like Groundswell, or to kind of, I feel like communities used to do better engagement with like local events, local shows with farms, and I think we've lost that a little bit. And I wonder whether there's a bit of room there as well, engaging parents with what's happening. And the Open Farm Sunday stuff's cool.
I think we all need to take responsibility, don't we, in some ways?
That's what I'm getting to, but it's hard to kind of, it's...
What more could the government do, Dan? What more could they do? the government, what more could they do, and politicians? Do they have enough knowledge on this sector?
I think some do.
Yeah.
I think some do. I think they have to be very careful about some of the, what I would suggest is slightly rash policy coming out. And I think actually they need to look at this area a bit more in its own entity. And actually, you know, there's been a lot of stuff with the new, even the new subsidy systems around new entrants, and you know, sometimes it's been forgotten, which actually I would suggest would be almost being a given, that it would be a priority. Certainly when we look at our kind of aging workforce, and you know, inheritance tax and things like that, they are all things that will have an effect. And yeah, I'm sure we're not the only industry. You know, we're fighting for space at kind of careers fairs and at the policy tables because everybody's in, you know, builders, for example, or the army, or, you know, we've got to kind of fight for that space. But I think the one thing we do have up our sleeve is the kind of, we get to work outside, we get to be a part of nature, we get to produce food. I think there are so many things going for it. It's just that link doesn't seem to be quite there.
And then you've got the other issue of years ago, there was just like so many careers. There was like, you know, you go be a nurse, or you'd do this or that. You know, they were the professions, or you go and work in this. Now there are so many different career paths, aren't there?
Yeah, and many of them are very attractive. You know,
yeah.
Who wouldn't like to, at the age of 18, earn crazy amounts of money and go and live in the city and kind of, you know, I can understand why. So I guess it's, maybe we need to be a bit more formulaic about how we present as an industry and the opportunity that's there, because, you know, there is lots of opportunity.
Maybe we need more TV shows.
Maybe, and I've no doubt it's been quite amazing actually. The talking to people globally who watch Clarkson's Farm is crazy. You know, talking to school children in the classroom in Canada, and they'd watch Clarkson's Farm.
That's crazy.
You know, and I mean, that surprised me, but it's obviously it's reaching audiences. So maybe we just need to maybe we need to look at that and how
maybe if we could get, you know, some more you know, young people coming into the industry on these types of shows.
I would, you know, I'd suggest someone like Caleb. You know, he's he's doing great work anyway. He's trying, but you know, are we supporting him enough? Are we kind of, you know, where does that directive come from? Is it, and you know, all of these things, I think they're great. Let's do more and more and more of them and see if it helps. But
do you think another answer could be producing loads of apprenticeships for farming, so people could get out there, try it? So
I've been looking a lot at, well, in America, internships but apprenticeships, and I think they're great. I think they're a really, really good way of doing it. But again, you've got to find the people to do them. Now, when at Jamie's Farm, we offer apprenticeship schemes, and we've got some really, really good people. But you know, it's hardly any. Whereas I would suggest that again, it comes back to this responsibility. It's practically hard. Apprenticeships are quite a hard thing to implement, but a lot of dairy farms, imagine if there was an apprentice on pretty much every dairy farm in the UK, it'd be amazing for lots of reasons, and potentially achievable for lots of reasons. You know, that would be really cool. But at the moment there are some, but it just doesn't happen as much. So there's so much in this. I mean, you could go on and get deeper and deeper and deeper. What's the answer? Yeah, as you can tell, I don't really as of yet, I don't really have an answer. And I'm really not sure that I'm going to have, but I don't mind asking questions. I don't mind looking silly while asking questions, and I don't mind who I'm asking those questions to. And I've had some really, really, really interesting meetings with people who do have the power to kind of create change. And I just think the more we talk about it, the more we explore it, the more we question it, then it can only be for the good. But as of answers, I guess that's part of the Nuffield journey, as they call it. You know, I actually think I know less now than when I started a year ago. You can kind of, I had these kind of ideas about what may work or when may not work, and I've gone off traveling and I've talked to many people. I had hours and hours and hours of recorded conversations about this, and I think I know less now than I did before.
It's a minefield, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Let's be honest, absolute minefield. But maybe if everybody did a little bit, towards it, it would help more.
I think that's what it boils down to. But again, that's an easy thing to say. We're as if we're talking about farmers and land managers specifically, we have to be so many things already. We don't have to. Maybe being adding recruitment and training and to that list is a step too far, and that's maybe why we're in the scenario we're in. I don't know.
I mean, Nitin has said he thinks that the government should put the agriculture subject in the school curriculum, and then they can enrol themselves in advanced agricultural courses after completing school. And then doing school visits to various agri-tech shows would also help them understand the importance of the subject. Now, you've got that, but then I know people that are teachers, and, they have to justify a minute of their time, in terms of what they're doing.
Being in schools at the moment is difficult. And even even budgeting, like finding transport to go on these trips it's tough. So again, where does that responsibility come from? Should it be people within the industry? Should it be, I don't know, the likes of the big chem firms? Should they be sponsoring these? And I'm sure they do to some degree. And, as I say, I'm sponsored by McDonald's. The industry is recognizing that there is an issue and that they have responsibility, and they're trying to do good work around it. And, I'd like to think that I could talk in 20 years' time and be like, because of that work, some of these gaps have closed. But education, schools, absolutely. Early years learning about food and farming, I would say, is imperative to ongoing issues in the UK. And there would be so many courses, an A level in kind of, there are T levels and things like that, but actually putting in the prime time and seeing it as a fully respected, proper career for the most, from the brightest to those who may not do so well at school, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to be amazing farmers. That's how we need to see it, rather than kind of, these guys can do that subject, and it's a kind of a bit of an add-on.
Because not everyone wants to be academic and study. They want to be hands-on, don't they? That's the beauty of life. We're not all the same, are we?
Absolutely. I always say that schools, sadly, they're in my opinion, they're almost trying to train everybody to be the same person to some degree, and that. Although there are lots of amazing teachers who do see the value in individuals, I'm sure, I know there are, but actually it's a really hard thing to manage, and we do, we need to kind of capture those individuals who would be amazing at this. And I've seen thousands of them, and I'm not sure any of them have really gone on to be farmers, and maybe that's a failing in me and how I communicate. But yeah.
Excellent, Dan. Well, listen, I really appreciate your input on that. But a question I ask everyone, I know this is a burning topic, what we've talked about, but what other issues do you think are going to become big deals within the sector going forward?
I think so. I've just started some work with Herefordshire Rural Hub, and they're doing some amazing work trying to support farmers through the kind of environmental issues. Now, I'm in the Wye Valley, which the river is famously not great, and the farmers are getting under a lot of flack for it, and in some places rightly so, in lots of places really not fairly. But I think that pressure is going to increase. I think the government has, coming from the top, they're putting pressure on the environmental stuff. That's making public more aware. There's a huge piece around perceived animal welfare and that sort of stuff. I think those kind of external stresses in terms of public perception and certainly environmental is really at the heart of why I'm trying to do what I'm doing, because we need to see some change there, and we need to see progression. And even if it's not all bad, which it absolutely isn't, we still need to see change to kind of combat some of the stuff that's just on the horizon.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Dan, what a great discussion. You've highlighted some great things for us to consider. You know, it is a minefield. I know I've said it before, but there's so much that you could go off into on tangents on this subject. But it was great to have some insights and some of the Nuffield research that you've done, and we wish you the best of luck with completing it and getting the answers. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. Thank you, Dan. Keep following us for some great new discussions we've got coming up. If you've got an interesting topic in agriculture or farming that you would like to talk about, please get in contact with me at Agricultural Recruitment Specialist, which is www.agrirs.com. And if you'd like to hear on these topics and these issues in farming and agriculture, please follow us on various channels such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Just look up Agriculture Live. So thank you so much for joining us. Dan, would you like to say goodbye?
Yeah, thank you very much. It was great. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.